Let's see if this works. Howdy. My GoPro, well, the battery on the GoPro died, so I have to get a new one. So I'm using my Chinese camera. Hopefully it'll work. That's just my luck. Howdy. Somehow amongst the smaller GunTuber channels, I have developed a reputation of a sort of bookish person, something of a scholar of guns. I don't know how that happened, because I'm just a dumb hillbilly, really. Honest. But there's one guy who goes by AR American. Does an interesting channel. He's very much into these big express rifles. And if you're not familiar with express rifles, a bigger GunTuber who goes by a Kentucky Ballistic Scott, he likes to play with them a lot. Things like 500 Nitro Express or those kind of rifles. Well, those things were all designed for hunting big game. What they call the Big Five: Cape buffalo, rhino, lion, elephant. I guess tiger's the other one. I'm not that familiar with it. But AR American contacted me and said, "Can you do something about Cape guns?" I went, "Right. What's a Cape gun? Never heard of it." Well, I do have some books, so I did some digging, and about 2 hours later I pulled my head out and went, I can find almost nothing about them in my whole collection. The big game hunting and express rifles is very much a thing of the British, and specifically the British of the period called the Raj, which is the mid-19th century until they handed India back. And the Raj was a period in which basically India, in India, the British became the highest ranking caste. And in Africa, well, at the time they ran South Africa, Rhodesia, Nyasaland, Southwest Africa, much of Tanganyika. They had a whole bunch of it. Everything right up to the Belgian Congo, the British controlled. And down from the Nile to Sudan, they also controlled. So big game hunters would go after Nile crocodile and elephant and lions and Cape buffalo and gazelles and all kinds of things. Well, back then you'd have what they called native bearers. And a native bearer was somebody who carried all your stuff when you went on a safari. And one of the things they liked was what they called the gun bearer. And that's because when you went hunting, what you did is you had a rifle over here and a shotgun over there and a smaller rifle over here. Well, the shotgun was for grouse or other flying birds. The other rifle, usually like a Martini Henry and .303, that was for shooting smaller animals, gazelle, wildebeest, things like that. But the big stuff, you would have an express rifle. Well, somebody got the bright idea, well, why don't we just combine the two and have an express rifle and a shotgun in the same gun? What they came up with, now this is just a Sears Roebuck or Ward's or something, double shotgun, but it'll give an example of it. They'll have a single barrel that has rifling in it for shooting a rifle through it, and the other one will be a smoothbore for shooting shotgun. So you have two guns in one. And this was very popular for a while, and it was called the Cape gun. And there were many makers of these things in England, in Austria, and in Germany. And one person who was a maker of these things and also wrote a lot about it, hold on a second, let me get this down where you can see. Like I said, I'm using a dumb camera that I don't particularly care for. There. This is W.W. Greener's book on the gun. Greener was a big maker, besides being a scholar of the gun, he was a big maker of those kind of guns, of express rifles, shotguns, and Cape guns. And I was going to dig my way through this, but this is an antique. It's a first edition, and it's rather rare. So what I did is I bought another copy of it, because this is a lot easier to go through. And if I happen to ruin a page, well, that's a shame, but I'll live with it, that kind of thing. Anyway, this is looking down the bore of a Cape gun. And by the way, if you would like a copy of this, you can go to Google Books, and for a moderate price, what I call highway robbery, you can get a copy of it. But if you go to archive.org, you can download a PDF of it, which is what I did, because even with this, that font is just really small, and for my old eyes, I prefer something I can actually read. Anyway, this is a book. This is about Greener. W. Greener, in his book *The Gun and Its Development*, mentions that these guns were much esteemed by South African sportsmen, that it was useful in countries where the kind of game that may be encountered cannot be determined beforehand. It was also found useful by poorer immigrants who could not afford two different kinds of firearms. On the other hand, he mentions that there were some drawbacks. A Cape gun is pretty heavy compared to an ordinary shotgun, and the balance is also somewhat affected, making wing shots more difficult. As a rifle, it is light compared to ordinary rifles and has a larger recoil when used with heavy loaded cartridges. Therefore, he recommended getting a separate rifle with a double-barreled shotgun instead. It must be mentioned that Greener also manufactured combination guns and choke-bore rifles, which we will study in the near future, he says. Okay. Now, if you look in Greener's book on page 639 or 638 or so, he discusses these things. Now, remember something. Greener is from a time between, during the Raj, before the 19th century, before the 20th century. He was of a time when black powder was king. Smokeless had just come on the scene. And in England it was called cordite. And the use of cordite in big bore express rifles was not well known. And the loads for different cordite recipes for these big cartridges was not exactly a science at the time. Many guns were blown up finding out what the actual pressure ratio on things were. If you had a Damascus barrel, don't even think it. Well, anyway, between the time of, before the invention of any kind of double-barreled or double gun, there were different systems developed. Whitworth was coming up with his type of rifling. There was another fellow who came up with a really cool system called the Paradox. And the Paradox was basically a rifle barrel with the last few inches of it being rifled. A shotgun barrel with the last few inches being rifled, so that you could use it as a shotgun, or you could shoot it as a rifle barrel if you really had to. It was sort of a compromise. Then the Cape gun came along. Let's see. This is not the part I wanted. Cape guns. Okay. Nope, that was the part. Okay, it's just I missed what I was looking for. Okay. The Cape gun were usually in something like 8-bore or larger. The usual way to do it, by the way, the Austrians, do you know how the British right now drive on the wrong side of the road? By the way, trivia, that's because of the traffic on the London Bridge that goes back to Roman times. If you were driving on London Bridge, you drove on the left side of the road going into London and on the right side leaving London. So British got used to driving on the left side of the road. Americans drive on the right side of the road with their driver's seat on the left side so that they can see the other guy easily who's coming at them. Anyway, they extended this, the British extended this to their guns too. If you have an Austrian or a German gun, the bore on it will be rifled on the right side, and the smoothbore will be on the left. A British gun, the rifling is on the left side, and the smoothbore is on the right. We're speaking of Holland and Holland, Purdy, the various makers of them over there, and bigger makers over here as well who got into the game here in America. But all of the makers in Rigby also made it, by the way. But the makers in Austria, and I would suggest the Austrian or the German guns because they're much more ornate, much better tooling on the engravings, and they're just, well, pedantically German in their construction. Interesting gun. I didn't know anything about them until I started digging into this, and I found all sorts of information about these things. It's just amazing. Let's see. The one thing I wanted to say is look at the size of those bullets. And here are some load tables and data for the various express rifles. What drop you can expect shooting at deer, things like that. And they like to shoot round ball a lot in it. Can you imagine thudding into an elephant with a round ball like that of soft lead? Wow. You might end up with a really ticked off elephant. Or what about you're riding on an elephant in a hoda, which is that little platform on the back, and a tiger attacks you. If you look on YouTube, there is a video of a guy riding on an elephant when a tiger jumps out of the forest and just leaps right at him. The tigers are not stupid. They know where the danger is. So they would have these little short-barreled, double-barreled pistols that they would use for that very eventuality. Anyway, this is what I have learned, mainly from Greener here, about the Cape gun. Fascinating period in British history, and a really lost art in today's world because there just aren't that many elephants, tigers, lions, and bears that need to be shot with such a big bullet anymore. So anyway, fascinating thing.